Hey, Jean-Pierre here with Soma Kombucha and Kitchen Sink Farming. I just wanted to talk quickly about how I came to find out about red light and infrared therapy, some of the benefits that I've experienced, and just a little bit about the science behind why it works. So, my family has an autoimmune disorder that runs through it called Raynaud's syndrome. It creates tingling and numbness in the hands and feet under conditions of stress or cold or some other times. And it wasn't anything that I ever experienced or dealt with until I moved to the Pacific Northwest. And then I would be cold or walking cooler or whatever, I would start to get a little bit numb. You could see the circulation would be cut off in my hands. Kind of annoying, not really that big of a deal. About 6 months ago, I started to experience patches on my hands that were permanently numb or tingling. And that was really more than annoying, it was concerning. I looked a little bit more into the long-term effects of Raynaud's syndrome, and I saw that there can be nerve damage, permanent circulation issues leading to tissue death called gangrene, neurological disorders, joint problems, bone problems, all sorts of stuff that I did not want to have in my experience. I've got a 5-year-old, I need this body to last and work really well for a long time. So I started looking into natural therapies, and I learned about infrared therapy, which is always combined with red light therapy. They're just a couple of wavelengths that usually go hand in hand. And I learned that the infrared light will penetrate into the skin, will stimulate healing of all sorts of body systems. More on that later. And so I thought it's worth it to give it a try. So I found a blogger who recommended a certain panel. I gave it a shot. I started to experience some benefits with my hands. I would spend 15 minutes in the morning with my hands and my lower body in front of the panel, and then I would move it up and do my upper body. And it was good. I was pretty excited about it. Then I learned about this brand, Kuga, and I saw that the radiance was about double the panel that I was using and the common numbers. Radiance being the power of the light, like how intense it is. We're trying to mimic the sun's energy here. So I decided to give it a try. It just also seemed like a much higher quality build. So once I started using the Kuga device, my results just accelerated maybe 5 times faster. Fast forward, it's been about 6 months, about 4 months after using the Kuga device, and I'm proud to say that I've got no issues with my hands whatsoever. That's completely gone away. I've also experienced a bunch of other benefits that I'm really excited about. My sleep has gotten better, and I'll talk really a little bit more about why that might be and the science part of this. I track my sleep when I use the red light therapy in the morning. That night I get generally about 10 points higher, from 70 to 80 or I've never gotten high 80s before I started using the red light therapy, so that's really exciting. My skin is amazing, which I care a little bit less about than some of the longevity benefits, but it points to the collagen production underneath my skin, which is really helpful for connective tissues and bones and joints and that sort of thing. It's clear, it's soft, it's nuts what it's done to my skin. And so a couple other things. One is, so I'm going to talk a little bit about my health, and it's a little bit revealing to do that. I kind of feel like I need to be bulletproof, but that's what this is all about. So there's another thing that cropped up since I started living in the Pacific Northwest, which is I would get itchy rashes throughout my body when exposed to cold, especially wet cold. It's called cold urticaria, which is hard for me to say without an Indian accent because there's a lot of videos from the Ayurvedic standpoint about this, not a lot from Western modalities. I tried all that stuff, tons of turmeric with black pepper, cinnamon, all sorts of things, and nothing had any effects. So I've been using the red light therapy for the nerve effects and for other things, and been doing that for about 6 months now. A couple of weeks ago, my son and I were on a hike, and it was cold, it was rainy, and he was driving his little RC car. We were about 2 miles down the hike, and he drove his car over a bridge into a river. So I tried to be a good dad. I jumped into the river about up to my waist and was searching around for the car. And so I was wet with cold water in the cold weather up to my waist and from my hands to my elbows, which would always trigger a really bad response. We had about 2 miles left to turn around and come back. And I was dreading it. I was feeling happy about being a good dad, but I was dreading what was going to happen to my body. I was wearing jeans; they were clinging against me. Bad news. I'm really happy to say that I had zero rash or zero bad results from that, which is just huge. But maybe the most incredible thing, I'm really happy that I've been trying to make this video for a couple of weeks. I didn't get around to it. But 5 or 6 days ago, something amazing happened, so I'm really glad that I procrastinated. I sprained my ankle at the trampoline park almost a week ago, trying to do 2 backflips in a row. I had a similar thing happen about a year ago, just a few days before we went on a hiking trip in Hawaii, and it was miserable. I had to hobble around with a cane. I tried to cancel the air tickets and the Airbnb, and I couldn't, and so we went, and it was just awful. A couple of weeks of just hobbling around. This sprain was much worse. I spent that night just moaning in pain, couldn't get to sleep. I don't do pharmaceutical stuff, but I was scanning my mind like, is there any aspirin in the house that my mom left, or in a first aid kit or something? I just wanted to get out of pain and be able to get to sleep so that I could be functional the next day. And finally, I wrapped it, I put it up on my son's bed and laid on the floor and was able to go to sleep. So I knew that red light therapy is used for athletes in muscle tears and sprains and that kind of thing. And so I gave it a shot. The next morning, I spent about a half an hour with my ankle under the red light therapy. And it felt like it was, stuff was starting to move around a little bit. So that was good. Then around noon, I did about another half an hour. And by that afternoon, I was in zero pain. And I kept forgetting that I had any issue with my ankle. The next day, I walked my son a mile to school and back, and had zero issue. And then the day after that, I went for a run. So it was just absolutely just mind-blowing that happened. So now I'm going to talk really quickly about a couple of mechanisms about why red light and infrared therapy work, just from my limited knowledge. But there's 2 different things. Before I get into that, I want to mention that humans evolved to be under the sun for several hours a day. So a lot of our body mechanisms are related to the different wavelengths of light that come off of the sun, and different times of the day there's different wavelengths. We get red light in the morning and the dusk, in the sunrise and the sunset. We see the red light, it resets our circadian rhythms, which is one of the reasons it helps with sleep so much. And it prepares our body to synthesize more vitamin D from the noon UVB light that's coming down from the sun. So we kind of there's all these mechanisms that are going on. The microbiome that's in the world, earthing, and the free electrons that are on the surface of the earth that we used to touch at all times. And and what's coming off of the sun, and all these sorts of other things, which we're just barely starting to be able to experience and explain. So in our modern life, and in the Pacific Northwest especially, we don't get a lot of sun. So augmenting with stuff like this is fantastic. UVB light, like I mentioned, is also really helpful, but it can be damaging. So one of the things I love about red light and infrared therapy is that you can't have too much. You could do it for hours a day with no problem. And sometimes I do. So there's a couple of things that red light therapy does. One is, I mentioned how it resets our circadian rhythms. The other thing is that it stimulates ATP production in our cells and tissues. It's adenosine triphosphate. It's produced in the mitochondria of our cell, which we've all heard about from health class in high school. But what's really cool about this is that it stimulates growth and healing in not just one tissue, but in all of the tissues in the body that it can reach. I'm talking about skin, hair, nails, eyes, bones, joints, heart, nervous system, all of our blood vessels, hormones, lungs, everything that you can imagine that's within just a couple inches of the surface of our skin is stimulated, improved, bolstered by infrared and red light therapy. Our immune system, I didn't even mention, I've got swollen lymph nodes since I was a teenager in my neck and in my groin area, and the only sickness that I've ever gotten is throat infections. And so being in front of the red light and the infrared light, they're starting to shrink and soften just because of those healing penetrating rays going in there, which is having some benefit in my life. I'm going to do another video about taking care of our prostate for men over 40, and I'll reference some of the benefits there, mostly for the dudes. But yeah, so that's a little bit about red light therapy and the benefits that I've experienced in a pretty short time. So I'm just really, really excited about this.